the right time to stand up for freedom? Could it be when you start to feel creating children who'll inherit the pain and the debt of this nation and be slaves to the banks that cause hyperinflation, who are masters of commerce, lies, and bad legislation? Whoa, if you looked in the eyes of 1,000 young children through fences of razors, their innocence stolen as the red flag of tyranny flies in the open, is that when you finally notice? Whoa, whoa, but I'm only a stranger here. I'm a long, long way from my home, and they say I can't change all the things I find strange, for what can one man do alone?
Good evening. Welcome back to the Liberty Test podcast. I'm your host, Dan Castello, and tonight I'm joined just by Robert Schuon. Bob, how are you?
Doing good. Well, no, I'm freezing actually, but that's beside the point.
I was just going to say I've got my heat set at 65 for reasons we'll probably get into, but it is one of the most real winters I think we've had here in New York in a while, and there is some crazy nonsense coming down from our illustrious governor that I just thought we had to vent about today. Rather than try and do her policy justice, I'd rather let her speak in her own words. Bob, you've got, I think, some video?
Yes, we do.
Let's run it.
Your house is freezing. You should gather everybody in the family in as small of an area as possible, preferably no windows or protect your windows. Just stay together. Bring all the pets, everybody together for the time being, because the warmth of other human beings can literally help you warm up the other individuals. And so it's kind of a cozy setting, but if it gets that bad, you want to keep your family safe and alive. Goes out. Your house is...
All right, well, let's see. Freezing to death together was described as cozy. I don't know about that one myself, but, huddle together, cover up the windows as best you can, and you'll be cozy together. Now, I find this personally a bit strange, since the governor is all about banning natural gas, banning gasoline-powered snowblowers, banning gasoline-powered lawnmowers. I mean, New York State the politicians are literally talking about passing laws to ban all of these devices for, here's the punchline, global warming. It's just like, this state cracks me up sometimes. It really does.
Well, I mean, I have my own suspicions about why they're seizing on the topics they seize on. I don't think they give a hoot about saving the climate, but if we take them at their word, which is what we do on this podcast, before we rip them to shreds, how could we steel man?
It's like, yeah, you get to a point where it's like, wait, you said what? Okay, because here's the thing. Okay, let's presume the global warming. Let's presume, and believe me, if we ever got an episode of that, you don't want to discuss it with me because I have numbers, I have facts, and but okay, they're saying that tiny amount of carbon monoxide and dioxide emitted by snowblowers, emitted by lawnmowers, will affect the global warming of the entire world just from the emissions in New York State. Add to that the think about the children aspect of natural gas, because this is why they want to ban the natural gas, is to protect the children, because natural gas could be toxic. I guess if they're trapped in the house with no windows and no ventilation with a natural gas stove, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
It feels like they're reaching back to the playbook that the original progressive busybodies used over 100 years ago when they were trying to, you know, get families to stop using coal to heat their homes in the middle of English winters.
yes.
You know, I remember learning in school here in the United States, that families would live in these, horribly air polluted, buildings. And isn't it so much nicer, how we don't heat our homes with coal and stuff like that? And look, I don't know. I wasn't around back then, and I don't know anybody who was, so I don't know what the reality was. But now I find myself being very skeptical of those claims because they sound so much like the bullshit that we're fed nowadays.
Yep.
I mean, we've been heating our homes with natural gas, and we've been using our internal combustion engine snowblowers for at least as long as I've been alive, and I'm still alive.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, they also want to ban burning wood to heat your home.
Yeah, for
There
the
was
same
actually an
reason, I'm
article,
sure,
right?
because it'll reduce asthma, right?
Wasn't it the New York Times? What paper was that? I forget. It was an upstate
Doesn't
paper.
matter. They're all propaganda outlets.
Well, that's okay. So here's the problem. It's like ban everything, and then literally huddle together to stay warm. Like, okay, it gets to the point where it goes from the ridiculous to the sublime.
It's really hard. I mean, we're supposed to steel man this, and I guess we should come back to it in a second. But before we do, there is a Thomas Sowell quote that just the fatal attraction of government is that it allows busybodies to impose decisions on others without paying any price themselves. No matter how disastrous those decisions turn out to be, the busybodies pay no price. They can always blame it on those who carry out their orders.
That's right. Is it you didn't carry out my program well enough? That's always who was it that like actually executed for poor execution of their plan, no matter how silly or ridiculous the plan is. Okay, the average snowblower, at least downstate, is run about 6 to 8 hours for an entire winter. It's
Well,
used
not here in central New
well,
York.
no. Well, when you live in Buffalo, it's kind of like a continuous thing, but but the point being is that okay, you can't like, are you going to ban the snow plows too? Because realize they burn a lot more diesel fuel than the emissions from
Bob, we're going to have electric snow plows. I mean, come on, right? We're getting those electric buses. Look, I mean, fine. Yeah. I'll do my best to steel man here. Government needs to jumpstart the green economy because greedy corporations are only going to double down on what already makes the money, right? And if you went back, I don't know, 150 years and you asked people what would make their lives better, what invention, they would say, a stronger horse, or a better insulated buggy. And then they come along and they invent cars. Nobody could have imagined that, right? So somebody has to drive innovation and make it profitable with subsidies until the free market wants to jump in and take over, because obviously greedy companies are not going to want to take the risk of inventing technologies that might not take off. And even if you are a free market absolutist, I mean, how are you supposed to invent an entire new economy, a new logistical system from the ground up? If you need charging stations and you need better batteries and you need better electric generation, there's no one company out there, or really any one venture capitalist, who's going to be able to fund all of that. And then besides, don't you need things like eminent domain and government to be able to make sure that, the logistical infrastructure is in place, even if individuals don't want that stuff in their backyard? And then speaking of that, finally, we also need to make sure that there's social justice, because traditionally corporations would, buy the cheapest land available and put their ugly eyesores and their polluting infrastructure in places where the poor and marginal and oppressed peoples live. So again, government needs to step in to juice up innovation, to subsidize things that will make life better for everybody. And eventually they can hand it over to corporations and we can have our free market, right, Bob?
No, 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 no. Okay, this time I have a little bit of a thing because you asked what capitalist, what investor would basically do something like that, and I'll respond to you. Henry Ford did. Henry Ford started from zero. There was no government assistance. There were no programs, but he created a car and he wanted to make it affordable. Why? Because so he can make money. He had a personal interest in this, okay? And he was ruthlessly efficient because it made him money. Every penny he spent was a penny he didn't put in his pocket. He even, people don't know this story, a lot of them, but you've heard of Kingsford charcoal? Kingsford charcoal was the leftover scraps from Henry Ford's cars, and he didn't want to waste any of it, so he created an entire company just to make charcoal briquettes so that he could use up those extra pieces. This is the fallacy that the left and the socialists use against any kind of capitalism, is that they're just greedy and they don't care. And guess what? There's a very strong motive for capitalists to do things efficiently, to not anger their clients, to wring every possible use out of the things that they make. And it's so that they can make money. The more they do that, the better the outcome for everyone. Because if people don't like something that you're making, they won't buy it. Okay, and we're in literally that situation right now. The government has taken over and is dictating, okay, that we go with electric cars and electric everything, no matter what. Doesn't matter that the grid can't handle it. Doesn't matter that electric cars don't work very well when the cold weather comes. The batteries lose a tremendous amount of their capacity in cold weather. Anybody who's seen the Teslas get stuck because the weather is so cold. Okay, I went up to school in northern New York. It was 7 below zero for the entire month of February. 7 below zero, like not Celsius, Fahrenheit. Okay, so here's the problem. All of this infrastructure is being forced on these companies, and you have the major automakers with thousands of these cars sitting on lots because no one wants to buy them because they were heavily subsidized by the government. People use them. They realize they don't fit their lifestyle, okay, and they return them, or they don't buy them in the first place. And you have this situation. Now, maybe like hybrids could be a good solution for some of this. But again, if the market doesn't want it, it doesn't matter how much government money you dump into projects. And now you get to the point where they're not only doing that, they're distorting the market by saying, no, it's illegal. Like if they were to come along tomorrow, just like California wants to, right? It's like 2030 or 2040. They want no gasoline cars in California. Zero. Okay? How well do you think that's going to work out for them? And how well is New York going to do by playing that same game? Okay? They want it, like I said, no using wood in the fireplace. Okay, where does it go? Because you can't, what are you going to do with all that wood as trees die and fall over? Okay, California already has massive wildfires because they're trying to pretend that you can't keep forests clear. You can't do this. New York wants to play this game of, no, you can't snow blow. Okay, well, what if you're an older person? How are you supposed to clear the snow away from your house? An electric snowblower? Yeah. Energy density speaks to that. It's like there's not enough energy in battery powered devices. Okay, it's the same. You're going to have battery powered fire trucks, ambulances. Okay, I don't really want to get into the whole global warming thing, but there's
We don't have to, Rob, because the fact is, our point here is that government exists ostensibly to serve the people and protect their rights. But as soon as you give human beings that privilege of having the kind of authority that our government does here in New York, they're human. What do? They use it to prop up the people who fund them and support their campaigns and give them cushy speaking gigs when they are out of office. It's corruption. These politicians exist to force crappy products on people that we wouldn't choose to buy on our own. That is their sole function. Politicians exist to allow corporations and other special interests to get their way when other people would not normally be convinced
yeah,
to,
but
to
that's
let them.
the problem. Is at this point, it's harkening back to some things that happened under our last governor, where now you're messing with people's lives. Okay, because if you take away that infrastructure that protects people, it allows them to have heat and have a way to clear out their driveways. Okay, get rid of the snow so that you can function on a daily basis. Okay, what do you do when the power goes out? If you don't have any, you're gonna the next will be what? Banning generators? Okay, is that the deal? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. All the noise and pollution from generators.
And this is especially if you lived, let's say, up in the Adirondacks area or by Syracuse, like Pulaski, right, where the big snows come off the lakes, and
Yeah.
you don't have that stuff, you are in a world of hurt because the
Well,
power does go out. The
tell me
snow
about it.
does, yeah. Well, the snow, the weather. Hey,
Yep.
regular storms. Okay,
We have a kerosene heater as a backup. We've got a fireplace that burns wood. We've got an electric heater in the basement, and we've got natural gas, HVAC, central air.
right.
We need all of those things.
It's
Uh, I've got my car with an inverter so I can power things, if the power goes out. These are just normal things that people do where I live in upstate central New York. It's not unusual for there to be 2, 3 feet of snow, that needs to be cleared. You're not going to do that in one pass with a battery powered snowblower. And if your batteries discharge and you can't recharge them,
wait. If you lose power, what happens
right.
then?
Yeah,
Okay,
I needed a new snowblower this year, and ultimately I managed to cobble together some repairs to the old internal combustion engine one that I have, and it's still going strong. And I'm glad I made that choice because I was seriously looking at an electric snowblower. I have an electric lawnmower, but I'll be honest with you, I bought it because I thought it would be simpler, than trying to maintain an old internal combustion engine one. I was frustrated with the lawnmower I had before, oil changes, spark plugs, you know, what would happen when it floods, stuff like that. So I've been relatively happy with the battery lawnmower, but it's not life or death. So when the lawn is wet and the mower runs out of batteries after 3 passes, and I've still got 3/4 of the lawn to do, I can afford to let it go recharge. That's not an option in the wintertime.
right.
That's just not an option.
Uh,
And I'm glad that the government is overreaching here on this. I'm glad that there are communities rejecting the electric bus proposals. I'm glad that there's memes of solar powered snowblowers. I'm glad that Hochul is doing such a good job of looking ridiculous with her how to shovel videos and her huddle together for warmth in a power outage video and all that stuff because it shows people what government really thinks of us, the
yeah,
normal people.
yeah. They want everybody to be dependent on government for everything. Here's the problem. They can kind of get away with some of that in California
Mm.
because they have a very mild climate. Their temperature range is very small for the most part until you get out of the big cities, and then all of a sudden things start to change. But in New York, we have seasons. We have a very hot summer. We have very cold winters. We have snow, a large amount of snow on occasion. And you go to places like Buffalo or up by Pulaski where the snow sweeps in over the lake. They've gotten 10 feet of snow in Buffalo in the past, and it's not unusual.
Mhm.
How do you handle that with electric devices? Remember, a gasoline-powered device, as long as you have gasoline on hand, and most homeowners in New York stockpile it, you
Mhm.
can fill it up in 5 minutes and continue on. An electric-powered device takes time to charge. And this is where this whole thing with Teslas, and Teslas are wonderful devices, and Elon is a very smart guy, but even with supercharging, it takes many, many times longer than it does to fill up a car. It takes, on average, about 3 minutes to fill a car from bottom to top, gives you 200 miles of range in 3 minutes.
Yep.
Try and do that with any other device, any electrical device. Same of course with diesel. It's the same idea. Okay. Then go on to the banning of the natural gas.
Oh God, when they did that bullshit to diesel, I mean, we could have
Oh, the
had much
DEF
more
fluid.
fuel efficient
Yep.
vehicles.
Yep. You could have had a truck that gets 50 miles to the gallon. 50, 50. But
Mhm.
no, because of the tiny amount of soot that diesel puts out, because the fuel isn't as pure, okay, you ended up with look with the truckers with the DEF fluid and all the problems that they're having, and it's killing the trucking industry. It's all the people that own their trucks. Most of the ones that have older trucks, they wouldn't part with that truck on a bet because they know the new trucks are just not reliable.
It's almost as if there is a war on decentralized lifestyles.
Yep.
It's almost as if the powers that be would really like us to consolidate in urban areas with high population density where it's very easy for people to stay right where they are and never go more than, say, I don't know, 15 minutes in any direction.
Yep.
And,
They're
in
doing
that
it
case,
here.
you
They're doing
don't.
it on Long Island. There's huge outcries about these basically encapsulated communities where here you are. They plant them next to the train stations because they still want you to
Uh-huh.
come into the cities to do your business and give the cities your tax money and all that. But they
What
don't
is it
want you to.
about socialists and trains?
I don't know. They love it, and
They
they're
love trains.
and I'm a train fan, okay? I'm a rail fan kind of guy, and I love trains of all kinds. But trains have a major basic flaw. It
Yeah,
costs a
someone
lot.
else controls where you
Well,
go and when.
but it's not, yeah, but in
I
that,
like my car. I go
it,
where I want, when I want.
it's,
And I bought a car that can go off-road, that
yep,
can do other things, and that works for me. If someone else wants a little smart car that they can drive around in the city and plug in and charge,
go for it.
more power to them. That's fine because this is the essence of libertarianism. The individual knows what is best to meet their needs. And I'm not going to have the same needs as you. You're not going to have the same needs as Kathy Hochul. And the fact is that nobody should have the privilege or the power to impose their likes and dislikes on other people. If someone is hurting you by doing what they want to do, then you can take it up in a court system. Fine. If you can prove that an individual person, by using their internal combustion engine, is causing global warming, good luck doing that. But if you can prove that, okay, fine. Then I guess we'll figure out how to actually implement some kind of damages. What do you want? 5 cents,
Yeah,
for my contribution to climate change? But the point is, libertarianism is focused on what's ethical, what's right, what makes for a just society where people can live and let live, which is what everybody claims to want. But that leaves no room for the corruption and the busybodies. I mean, the corruption, I think, is what we're seeing more and more and more of, the more news, gets past the censors and the propagandists, and the more we hear about how things really run.
It's also getting crazier and crazier. It's like, to stop people, especially who live upstate, who live in the middle of a forest country, from burning wood. It literally is like 1984 scenarios. Is that if you can't heat your house, what exactly are people supposed to do? And this is where there's a certain amount of when government overreaches too far, they start getting a real backlash because people will tolerate it up to a certain point, except for people like us, of course, because we don't tolerate any of it. But
we tolerate it. We live here.
Well,
I don't have any pitchforks and torches. This is the most extreme thing I'm going to do.
Speak out about it, so.
Sure, we'll speak out, but they channel it. They are totally fine with us expressing our views as long as we don't actually do anything.
Well, we have to try. So.
Yeah, but I mean, what can we actually do? I think we can stockpile gasoline. We can buy old cars that don't have computer controlled.
Oh yeah, got one.
My car's 15 years old. We can buy kerosene heaters while we still can. We can install wood burning stoves and fireplaces, while those things are still accessible. And I think what that will do is put some pressure on the busybodies and the corrupt kleptocrats, because if they want to get their way, they're going to have to actually go and take those things away from people who already have them. I think that they're losing patience with their slow and steady approach, because if you look back over the past century of progressivism, they've done a lot of very gradual stuff that works at generational levels. There are things we live with, that we put up with, that we tolerate, that our grandfathers would never have tolerated. But because it's been normalized, we're okay with that. And they're still trying that in a lot of ways, but I think when it comes to life and death things, like freezing to death, it's a lot harder. I think the technology that they want to replace tried and true tech with is not tried or true. I think people are skeptical and suspicious. And we've already seen Hochul walk back things like, her mandates about new construction and, stuff like that. So if they really want to get their way, they're going to have to pass some very harsh ordinances where they actually have to go in and take things away from people who already have them. They're going to have to be invasive in ways that they don't usually let themselves be.
You mean like those bans on fireworks that, nobody could ever go to another state, right, and go and buy that stuff and bring it into New York illegally, right? Because that would be wrong. That would be, against the law. So, if you were to go and buy, an appliance and bring it into New York State, or bring in a gas-powered snowblower from, Pennsylvania or New Jersey or another state, that would be wrong.
My guess is that they will require people to declare things on a list for the purposes of just having them on a list, because, they just need to know. They'll come up with some bullshit excuse like, we're just trying to calculate New York's carbon output or something. And anyway, enough people will comply with that. Not many, but enough. And then they'll start inspecting. They'll go to people's houses.
Okay? This is until the natural disaster happens. And then when it does, and then when it happens and people actually die, okay?
Nah, what happened in North Carolina? What happened in Tennessee? Remember that hurricane?
Yeah.
Been kind of memory hold, but not only did government not step in and help at all, they basically tried to facilitate the purchase of ruined properties by mega.
Oh, you like California?
California, Hawaii. That happened in Hawaii with the big fire. So the point is, I don't. Let me put it this way: the disasters are just opportunities for them, and there doesn't seem to be any real backlash.
We lost a governor over that. So.
Yeah, but they come and go and the system remains. I think that the idea that there's two parties is really just a convenient story and they take turns being in power, and they give people the illusion of feeling like they're making a difference when they go and vote harder. And I think that the real people behind the scenes who pay for the politicians are still getting what they want. So again, what people need to do is make themselves ungovernable. They need to recognize that individuals have the right to acquire, own, utilize, and dispose of assets. That's personal property in a nutshell. That's in our platform. People have that right. And just because the government says that you can't do a thing or that you have to pay an extra tax to do a thing, in other words, if they turn your right into a privilege, doesn't mean you have to listen. And I think what you're trying to say, if I can put words in your mouth, you tell me, is that if it feels serious enough to people, if it's life or death, and it's pushed fast enough so people don't have, a slow and gradual getting used to process, they will push back, or they will at least refuse to comply, peacefully. And that will make it hard for government because as much as they try to appear all powerful, they actually pull in their horns really fast
Oh yeah, they're
when people
cowards. I
push
mean,
back.
look, most politicians, the vast majority of politicians are cowards and bullies. That's what they do. They bully until people stand up to them and say no, and then they go, "Oh no, 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 I didn't mean it." Okay, they'll find any excuse, and they're also liars. Okay, flat out liars. I'm tired of pretending that they're not. They're liars. They will say any stuff you want to hear. And they do that so that they can get what they want and get the money that they want and the privilege and live like little kings and queens. That's what they do. And then the people like us say, no, you can't do that. And they're like, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. And it's at some point, if people don't stand up and say, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm not dealing with this, then you end up in that situation. I feel bad for people who live in California because unless you are one of those famous celebrities or somebody else that makes millions of dollars, the people who live in California are being mistreated. I mean, and it's happening here too. And like I said, when it starts happening where people are being found frozen, we've already seen this in New York City. We're going to probably revisit the entire Mamdani episode where, hey, we're not going to bring those people in because, they have the right to be on the street. Okay. 10 of them died. Whose fault is that? Okay, because you literally said we are not going to drag them inside to keep them warm. Okay.
Well, I mean, that actually sounds like a libertarian position.
Yeah.
Autonomy, right? You have the right to go outside and freeze to death if you
Here's the
want
problem. These people are mentally ill.
to.
Okay, and that's the problem. It's at some point their will needs to be helped. It needs assistance.
But Bob, here's the problem. That is always the rationale used by tyrants like
I
Hochul.
get it.
They will say, look, if you guys were only smart enough to understand what we, the experts,
Yeah.
understand, they would talk to you like you're five, and they would say, look at all these charts and graphs that prove whatever we want them to prove, and look at these computer models, and now we have to take away your internal combustion engine and your gas stove and all that stuff. We just have to. It's for your own good.
And that's
And
the difference.
evidence of your insanity or stupidity or ignorance is that you would resist us. Because if you were smart and rational, you wouldn't.
I do like the standard that New York always used to use on this is danger to yourself or others. And it's kind of our philosophy as well. If you're a danger to yourself or others, you need the help. Okay? If you want to go live on the street or live wherever, but you can take care of yourself, fine. But there are too many people that the state pretends help without doing a damn thing. Okay? Anybody
But
who's
Bob,
been
you're making the argument for a more effective government, one that is more knowledgeable with more power and better expertise.
No, not more power. It's
I'm on the opposite end there. I'm saying government should not be trusted with anything. I don't think we should have an office of dog catcher. I think that if something is worth doing, people will pay to have it done. And I think if nobody wants to pay for it, then it's probably not worth doing. And I think if there's a problem, like homeless people outside in the snow, there are people who are going to want to do something about that.
That's my point. Is that this should be instead of being mishandled by government, because it's never handled. Okay, that if government would get out of the way, okay, people will step up to
Mhm.
help these people, and if necessary, try to get them mental help, things like that.
Yeah, it's a shame Rose isn't here because she loves to talk about mutual aid societies
Yep.
and how they were co-opted and eventually driven out of
On purpose.
business
You
on
can't give
purpose.
homeless people leftover food from restaurants, because that's illegal
Hmm.
in the city of New York and in many, many other municipalities. For what possible reason?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but to bring this back to where we started with, the natural gas and the heat and,
Yeah.
all that stuff, you said government wants us to be more dependent, and you hit the nail on the head
Absolutely.
there. Because if we don't need them, then they're powerless.
And well, or they will be more
Forced to use
more
coercion.
obvious, right? And that's the part that they don't want, because they know they get pushed back when they start to coerce people. And that is the quickest way to drive a population into rebellion, is to start physically coercing them, and they know that. So they'd rather work in the shadows and be
But
like,
people don't, they think it's a conspiracy theory when they hear us say in the shadows, even though you're right. So let's be clear about what in the shadows looks like. It looks like subsidies. It looks like incentives. It looks like tax rebates. It looks like weepy, jerking, puff pieces on propaganda outlets like the New York Times and, the three-letter TV stations where, the governor comes out and says, "Oh, look at this poor, awful homeless person who's all, cold, and we need to do something about them." And what they mean when they say we need to do something
was, we need to
is,
steal your money,
Mhm.
so that we can create an agency with lots and lots of jobs of people that owe their job and employment to me,
Mhm.
so that they're going to do what I tell them to do over you, while I take the money out of your pocket at the same
Bob,
time.
it's an episode of The Sopranos. They find something, like trash collection that everybody wants, and they get their hooks in it. And yeah, the trash gets collected
Eventually.
eventually,
Eventually.
and maybe not to the degree that you would want it, and it's more expensive than it should be, but it gets collected. And you know what? People put up with it. And if you complain, what happens? Some guy shows up at your house and goes, "Hey, that's a cute dog you got there."
Yeah.
You
Be a
know?
shame if you lost it.
Ah, man. So that's what we're dealing with. Government is an armed gang. They claim a monopoly on violence, and ultimately, everything that they do, nothing is too petty, nothing is too small that they won't send armed people to your house, break in the door, shoot your dogs, and maybe you,
Your squirrel. Don't
and
forget the squirrels.
you're a squirrel, throw you in a cage if you survive, and then charge you for the privilege, with fines and fees and other
Interfering with an
things.
investigation.
Yes, exactly. To protect everybody's rights, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's look, people tend to uh, treat libertarians as we're the crazy ones, and we're saying, look, you are a human being. You have rights because you're a human being. And when somebody takes things from you that aren't doing anything, that you haven't done anything wrong, okay, who's the crazy one here? We're just saying this is wrong. You need to stand up and fight for your own rights, fight for your humanity, because otherwise you are a serf. You are a peon to the people who want to be in charge. And there is always someone who wants to be the tyrant, okay? Because it's fun. It's fun to lord it over other people. It's fun to make them do whatever you want, okay? But at the same time, if you got out of people's way and let them do their own thing, Okay, you don't have these kinds of problems. You look at some of the expansion back in the U.S. years, many years ago, before government really got its hooks into people, and look at how we went from this tiny country with 13 colonies to a massive industrial juggernaut because people were kind of just left alone to do what they wanted to do. And you know we we want people to be safe, okay? We don't want massive pollution over every part of the United States. We don't want global warming. But look at the actual facts. Look at what is actually going on and then see that these ridiculous programs that people like Governor Hochul are putting in place are simply destroying the right for people just to live. Okay, like I said, downstate, people live in New York City. They're already dependent. You're dependent on Con Edison. You're dependent on LIPA, whatever they call it this week, National Grid or whatever. You're dependent on all these agencies. But what happens, and you see that spark of libertarianism every time a natural disaster hits. When we had the hurricanes a few years back, all of a sudden people were left on their own. And you know what? They managed. They took care of things. They didn't have the electricity. They didn't have this service and that service, but they took care of it themselves.
I don't know, Bob. Now we live in a state where the governor is also our weatherman and
Yeah.
our nanny. She teaches us how to shovel, right? How to huddle for warmth in our own. Anyway, look, I mean, it's nice to see on social media how all of these posts get laugh reacted and, all the comments are negative, but they keep doing it for a reason. And social media isn't real life. I mean, if it was, I think New York State would be a lot different because almost everything I see on social media is very critical of Hochul. Now, that could be because I'm funneled into a particular view of social media, but I feel like when I talk to real people, most people are still critical of this, but I think it's more subliminal than that. I think there's a message being sent that we couldn't tie our own shoes without government looking over our shoulder and giving us advice. And whether we laugh at it or not, we're becoming habituated to its presence. And I think people need to see that. They need to know that it's more than just a stupid governor being inept at marketing. It's part of a process of creating dependency.
Yep.
Government wants us to need them or to at least think that we need them. And there are so many things now that people think we can't do without government. It's the who will build the roads argument,
Yeah, but
and
I'll
fine.
tell you this though. Government wants you to be so dependent that when something goes wrong, you will die
Yep.
rather than take care of yourself.
Because that way we give them all our money or most of it to
Or a
tell
lot
us
of
that nothing
power.
can go wrong.
Yep.
They will change the weather. Literally, that's what they're telling us when they
Yep.
say, stop using your internal combustion engine because it makes the weather bad. Trust us, we're going to decide how to make the weather gooder. And there won't be any natural disasters, Bob. So, don't
Oh,
worry.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
in fact, the
amazing.
natural disasters are proof that your snowblower is a problem.
Oh, is that what it is?
It's
Yeah.
hurting people when you snowblow the driveway. You're hurting
I'm kind of
people.
thinking that my independence and refusal to be dependent on the government is kind of the real problem here.
Yeah, that's how they view it. That's how they view it. But look, they may honestly believe their own bullshit. I mean, remember Obama's "You didn't build that" speech?
But
I got the
that was a lie. I mean,
I
really,
got
that
the
was a
sense he
complete lie.
believed that. I really
Yeah,
did.
because he's very good at it. They're very good actors in terms
Some of them.
of doing the whole, histrionic wringing their hands thing, and it's for the children, and it's always for the children. Well, when your children are huddling in the cold, okay, and trying to cover up your windows with pillows and blankets, just remember who put you there, because it sure wasn't the Libertarians, because we're sitting there trying to say, look, don't be crazy. These people are not your friends. They're not helping you here. They are trying to make you their peons so that they can go live and have their caviar and their jets to wherever, Morocco or wherever the heck they want to go. And you are left begging them for crumbs from the table. And this is what they want. You will have nothing and you will like it. And that's what they're trying to do.
Or you'll tolerate it just enough
Well,
that
just
you don't
enough. I
throw
mean,
them out.
it's, this is the problem, though. They ride that line, and eventually, it can be the smallest thing. We'll tip it over, and then they get a really, really angry reaction. And this is where it's getting closer and closer. I mean, but they're, of course,
I
now they're
worry
trying to
about that.
manipulate the election systems to
Wait, now?
prevent.
They've been doing that.
No, but I mean more. I'm talking more than they want to make it so that nobody can overthrow them. Even it's going to be eventually it'll basically come down to a Maduro situation where it's like, yeah, I'm the tyrant. I'm president for life, or I'm governor for life, and deal with it. Because if you don't like it, I'll have the state police come down and throw you in a prison cell, and there you are.
Yeah, well, at what point does the very, very, very thin veneer wipe completely away? The idea that we live in a democracy. Sorry, our democracy. I mean,
Well, this is where
first of all,
people forget states' rights are very, very important, and for this reason is that one state like New York can go completely insane. Okay, but there are other states that don't believe the same way. Okay, they have other ideas. They don't want to be part of the madness. And this is why New York is losing people left and right. They're gaining people who want to be dependents in favor, instead of people that want to build things in New York and to be independent and take care of their own lives and business.
it sucks to think, though, that if you want to be free, you have to be a refugee. You have to leave.
Yes. And it's terrible, because most of us that were born here, there are things about New York that are amazing and wonderful, and we love them, but more and more people are saying, I can't do this anymore.
It's tough, though. I love the land. I love the people I know here. I mean, so what if we get 3 feet of snow? I mean, I live right in the middle of where all that snow falls. So I got snowshoes and I enjoy hiking in the winter on snowshoes. It's fun. There's lots of places that are way, way worse. And yet I think there's a correlation between nice places where people want to live and putting up with a lot of government. You mentioned California. I think that when people love where they are, they'll put up with even more than they would if, frankly, they didn't like.
It gets to a certain point, and it all works until the money runs out, and this is the problem. And honestly, my opinion is the federal government should stop subsidizing all the states, all of them. Not just, because if you stop the subsidies, this stuff will come to a very swift end.
Yeah, but then they lose all their power. Like we were saying before, the money is how they control everything ultimately. And I don't want to get into it in this episode, but one of these days we'll have to do a fix the money, fix the world thing. And I think that one way or another, a reset of some kind is coming. It'll be interesting to see if it's the one that Hochul has obviously hitched her wagon to. You will own nothing and be happy. Yeah. The 15-minute city, electric everything, all that.
They realize where the electric comes from, right? Like, because again, this is where being from downstate, you got Indian Point, you had Shoreham, okay. By the way, we did not mention, I think, the fact that New York just raised the rates on electric like 20%. Okay, so now all of a sudden, that electric that she's pushing for is going to very much increase in price.
Oh, yeah, but the government can fix that too. It's greedy data centers that are causing the problem.
Yeah. Oh, she'll push
Government
them out.
can. Well, no, no. She'll just make them pay
Yeah.
for the electricity they use.
Yep.
She'll be a hero. And also, with subsidies and government planning, they're going to build more nuclear power plants. Really, they got this covered, Rob. I don't know what you're worried about.
Wait. No, we're shutting down nuclear power plants, remember? It's like, because that's what happened. And that's, again, we have, I think, even beyond California, I believe we have the highest power rates in the nation.
Yeah, well, I think all we have to do is
So we
look at
need more electric,
Europe.
right?
I think if we look at Europe, look at what happened to Germany. They
Yep.
became even more dependent on natural gas from a nation they view as their enemy because they got rid of their nuclear power.
Yep.
Whereas, places like France, even though, they're part of the same EU and all that stuff, they kept their nukes and they're doing okay in that respect. They're having other problems. But
They finally grudgingly admitted that, oh yeah, maybe shutting down the nuclear power plants wasn't that great an idea.
yeah, well, I think that Hochul has unveiled some proposals to do more nuclear. But again, anything that our bloated, corrupt central authorities do is going to be less efficient, more expensive, and more corrupt than what would be if we just allowed people with real skin in the game in a free competitive market to jockey with each other to see who could provide the best service at the lowest price. If people could buy and sell electricity on a truly open market, watch how the rates would come down.
That's why it's so regulated, because they're not going to let you start your own electric company because, oh, you could upset the apple cart. We don't want
Yeah.
that.
Well, no, 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 no. It's global warming, and isn't that convenient?
It's always
So,
convenient.
so I guess we've brought it pretty much full circle on this. Any final thoughts?
Basically, you do have to pay attention to what they're doing in Albany, especially. Okay, it directly affects you. The Libertarians are running a candidate for governor, of course, under incredibly difficult circumstances because the state made it that way. They deliberately made it so it's almost impossible for anyone except the two parties, I put that in quotes, to get on the ballot. Okay, but if we had help, we can get people on the ballot who can talk about these issues. At the very least, start there. Okay, you don't want to vote for a Libertarian for governor? Hey, great, but how about getting them on the stage to talk about this stuff, to bring these issues up? Because you'll see those politicians will backpedal so fast as soon as someone begins to question their motives and their dictates. But if it doesn't happen, if they don't get on that stage and be allowed to speak, you're in a vacuum. They can do whatever they want, and you're at the bottom of the food chain.
Well, I think what people should do then, because what you just said is good advice, I think they should do the same thing at a smaller scale themselves. I think if there's a town board, if there's a village trustee meeting, you can go to those things. You can go to school board meetings, and when they're deciding whether or not they want to take the state grant to have electric buses, you can speak up. You can raise these issues, and you'll probably be surprised that other people who were remaining silent were actually thinking the same thing you were brave enough to say out loud. And if you can get enough people to feel the same way, you can actually make a difference at the local level. And then that builds up from there. And eventually the politicians see which way the wind is blowing and they change their tack.
Yep.
And yeah, they'll come at us from a different angle. But if we are vigilant, we can hold government accountable. We can at least slow the spread of creeping statism. And we can preserve liberty at least a little while longer, because there's never a final boss battle, where you blow up the Death Star or you throw the ring in the fire and, no one can ever, come back and be evil again. That's not how it
Anybody
works.
who's watched that series found that out the hard way, because after episode 6, it didn't go away. Wait a minute, what happened?
Well, my point is people have to be vigilant and they have to be willing to speak up, not just wait for other people to speak up for them.
And do your
And
research, okay? Do your research. Because the one thing that the politicians hate is somebody who comes with the actual numbers and with the, hey, you said this, but the numbers say this. How do you explain that? And that's when they start to stutter and stumble and be like, well, it's good for the environment. No, it's not. I have the numbers right here, okay? And
right.
when you do that, all of a sudden they back off.
And I think you need to do it at the actual meetings where they are.
Yep.
Because if you're doing it on social media, like I was saying before, you might just be talking into an echo chamber. You know, it's channeled opposition. They let you vent in safe ways that don't bother them. And I think they use their propaganda and their manipulation to make you feel like you're having an effect. But honestly, you got to go to the meetings. You've got to meet other human beings in meet space, and you've got to speak your piece. And you've got to be civilized and respectful, firm and informed. And you have to hold these people accountable because they are cowards for the most part, and they will back down if you push, especially if there's more than one of you. And believe me, there is. We're not alone.
We are not alone.
All right. Well, I guess we can leave it there. I'm going to maybe turn my heat down a little bit more because of the national grid rate increases, and I'll throw on an extra sweater. And if I haven't frozen to death, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Where will you be when the order is given to censor your mind as free speech is forbidden, as martyrs for peace from the world will be driven away by the sound of a bellowing thunder and choke on the blood of a dream going under? Tear up our Constitution, and from every direction we cry revolution, standing together and without permission, soldiers for truth in the war of attrition, the love of our country as our ammunition. I'm a long, long way from my home, and I'm going to change all the things I find strange, for I am not one man alone. Yes, I'm only a stranger. I'm a long, long way from my home, and I'm going to change all the things I find strange, for I know